This German immigrant arrived in America with nothing but $25 and a few flutes to sell. Yet by the time he died, John Jacob Astor owned more real estate than anyone in American history. But here's the thing most people don't know. The Astor fortune wasn't built on luck or timing. It was built on one simple rule that every real estate mogul today still follows. And this rule made them richer than the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, and even the Rothschilds combined. Let me show you exactly how John Jacob Astor turned $25 into the largest real estate empire America had ever seen. Picture this. It's 1784, and a 20-year-old German butcher's son named John Jacob Astor steps off a ship in Baltimore with literally nothing. His entire fortune consists of $25 in his pocket and 7 flutes that he planned to sell. Most immigrants in his situation would have been grateful just to find work in a factory or on a farm. But Astor wasn't most immigrants. He had been studying something during his voyage across the Atlantic, something that would change everything. He had been talking to fellow passengers about the fur trade, and he discovered something that would make him the richest man in America. Here's what he learned. Beaver pelts that sold for $1 in America were worth £6 in London. And here's the kicker. Chinese tea that cost $1 in Canton was worth $5 in New York. Astor realized he wasn't looking at 2 separate businesses. He was looking at one massive triangle trade that could make him incredibly wealthy. But first, he needed to understand the rule that would make him richer than anyone else in American history. Before I tell you Astor's secret rule, you need to understand what New York looked like in 1784. Manhattan was tiny. Most people lived below what is now Canal Street. Everything north of that was farmland, forests, and swamps. The entire population of New York City was only 25,000 people. Most businessmen of the time were focused on trade, buying and selling goods for quick profits. But Astor was thinking differently. He was thinking about something that his competitors completely ignored. Time. Here's Astor's rule, the one that made him richer than the Rockefellers and Vanderbilts. Never sell land, ever. While other wealthy men were flipping properties for quick gains, Astor was accumulating. While they were cashing out, he was buying more. While they were celebrating short-term profits, he was building long-term wealth that would compound for decades. But here's what made Astor a genius. He didn't just follow this rule blindly. He had a system. Astor's first move was brilliant. Instead of trying to compete with established fur traders, he created his own network. He started by befriending Native American tribes, learning their languages, and understanding their needs. While his competitors were trying to cheat the tribes, Astor was building relationships. He established trading posts across the frontier, from the Great Lakes to the Pacific Northwest. His American Fur Company became so dominant that it controlled 90% of the fur trade in the United States. But here's the genius part. Astor wasn't just making money from furs. He was using the fur trade to identify the best land in America. Every time his traders established a new post, Astor would quietly buy up the surrounding land. When they found a good river crossing, he'd buy it. When they discovered a natural harbor, he'd buy it. When they identified fertile farmland, he'd buy it. His competitors thought he was crazy. Why was a fur trader buying worthless wilderness? They didn't understand that Astor could see the future. While Astor was building his fur empire, he was also quietly accumulating land in Manhattan. And this is where his genius really shows. In 1803, when most of Manhattan north of Canal Street was still farmland, Astor made a prediction that seemed insane at the time. He told his business partner, New York will grow north. The population will double, then double again. And when it does, this land will be worth a fortune. People laughed at him. Manhattan had plenty of empty space. Why would anyone want to live in the wilderness uptown? But Astor had studied London and Paris. He understood how cities grow. He knew that as populations increased, land values would explode. So while other wealthy New Yorkers were building mansions and buying luxury goods, Astor was buying every piece of Manhattan real estate he could get his hands on, lot by lot, block by block. He was assembling what would become the most valuable real estate portfolio in American history. Here's where Astor's strategy gets really interesting. He didn't just buy land and hold it. He developed a system that maximized his returns while minimizing his risks. First, he would buy undeveloped land at cheap prices. Then, instead of developing it himself, he would lease it to other people on long-term contracts, usually 21 years. The tenants would build houses, shops, or factories on his land, improving its value at their own expense. But here's the brilliant part. When the lease expired, everything on the land, all the buildings, all the improvements, became Astor's property. He would then release the land at much higher rates, reflecting its improved value. This system meant that Astor was getting paid rent every year, while other people were spending their money to make his land more valuable. It was like having an army of workers improving your property for free. In 1835, a massive fire destroyed much of Lower Manhattan. Most property owners saw it as a disaster. Astor saw it as an opportunity. While other wealthy men were selling their damaged properties at low prices, Astor was buying. He understood that New York would rebuild, and when it did, the new buildings would be bigger and better than the old ones. He spent over $2 million, an enormous sum at the time, buying up fire-damaged lots. His friends thought he had lost his mind. His business partner, Fitzgreen Halleck, begged him to stop. "You're throwing away your fortune," Halleck warned. But Astor had done his research. He knew that New York's population was growing by 60% every decade. He knew that the city was becoming the commercial center of America. He knew that demand for Manhattan real estate would only increase. Within 5 years, those worthless fire-damaged lots had tripled in value. Astor's $2 million investment was now worth $6 million. But he still didn't sell. By the 1830s, Astor had figured out something that modern real estate moguls still use today: location monopolies. Instead of buying random properties all over the city, he focused on controlling entire neighborhoods. He would identify an area that was about to develop. Maybe the city was planning to build a new road, or a wealthy family was moving there. And then he would buy every available lot in that area. Once he controlled the neighborhood, he could dictate rents and development. His favorite target was the area around what is now Times Square. In the 1820s, it was just farmland. But Astor could see that as the city grew north, this area would become the center of Manhattan. So he quietly bought lot after lot until he owned most of what would become Midtown Manhattan. When other developers wanted to build in his neighborhoods, they had to come to him. He could charge whatever he wanted because he had no competition. Here's something most people don't know about Astor. He was one of the first businessmen to understand the importance of political connections in real estate. Astor became close friends with politicians like Martin Van Buren, who would later become president. He loaned money to city officials. He made strategic donations to political campaigns, and in return, he got advance information about the city's development plans. When the city was planning to build a new street, Astor knew about it months before anyone else. When they were choosing locations for new public buildings, Astor had inside information. This allowed him to buy land that he knew would increase in value. But Astor's political connections gave him something even more valuable: influence over city planning. He could lobby for roads to be built near his properties. He could push for zoning changes that benefited his developments. He essentially helped design Manhattan to maximize his own wealth. Astor's approach to tenants was revolutionary for its time, but it would be considered ruthless by today's standards. He developed what became known as the Astor lease, a contract that heavily favored the landlord. Under Astor's leases, tenants were responsible for all maintenance and improvements to the property. If they wanted to make changes, they had to get Astor's permission. And if they fell behind on rent, even by a few days, Astor could evict them immediately and keep all their improvements. But here's the genius part. Astor's leases were so profitable that people competed to get them. His properties were in the best locations, and tenants knew that being associated with the Astor name would help their businesses succeed. Astor also pioneered the concept of percentage rent. Instead of charging a fixed monthly payment, he would take a percentage of his tenants' profits. This meant that as New York's economy grew, Astor's income grew automatically. By 1840, Astor's real estate holdings were generating over $200,000 per year in rental income, equivalent to about $6 million today. But remember, he was following his rule: never sell. Instead of spending this income on luxury, Astor reinvested every penny into more real estate. This created a compound effect that made him richer every year. The more land he owned, the more rent he collected. The more rent he collected, the more land he could buy. His competitors were making money and spending it. Astor was making money and multiplying it. Here's where Astor showed his true genius. He wasn't just building wealth for himself. He was building a system that would keep his family rich for generations. In 1848, shortly before his death, Astor created one of the first major family trusts in American history. Instead of leaving his land to his children directly, he put it into a trust with strict rules. The land could never be sold, only leased. This meant that future generations of Astors would receive income from the properties, but they couldn't squander the family fortune by selling the land. The trust would preserve the family's wealth forever. Astor also included a brilliant provision. Every 21 years, when the leases expired, the rent could be reset to market rates. This ensured that the family's income would grow along with New York's development. When John Jacob Astor died in 1848, he was worth $20 million, equivalent to about $600 million today. But more importantly, he owned over 700 lots in Manhattan, making him the largest private landowner in New York City. His son, William Backhouse Astor Sr., inherited the empire and continued following his father's rule: never sell. William expanded the family's holdings and increased their rental income to over $1 million per year. But it was William's son, William Backhouse Astor Jr., who really proved the power of his grandfather's strategy. By 1875, the Astor family's Manhattan real estate was worth over $100 million, equivalent to about $2.5 billion today. Here's what's amazing. If the Astor family had continued following John Jacob's rule, they would be worth hundreds of billions today. The land that John Jacob bought for a few $100s per lot is now worth millions per square foot. But here's what happened. Later generations of Astors broke the rule. They started selling land to fund their lifestyles. They built massive mansions, threw lavish parties, and lived like European aristocrats. They forgot that their wealth came from holding land, not spending money. The Astors who survived the Titanic disaster, like John Jacob Astor IV, who died on the ship, had already begun selling off the family's Manhattan holdings. By the 1950s, most of the original Astor real estate empire had been sold. But here's the incredible thing. Astor's rule still works today. Every major real estate fortune in America, from Donald Trump to Sam Zell to Stephen Ross, has been built on the same principle. Buy good real estate and never sell it. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, follows a similar rule with stocks. Our favorite holding period is forever. Jeff Bezos built Amazon by reinvesting profits instead of taking them out. Elon Musk keeps buying more companies instead of cashing out. The principle is universal. Compound growth beats quick profits every time. Here's the secret that modern real estate moguls don't want you to understand. Astor's strategy wasn't complicated. It didn't require special connections or insider knowledge. It just required discipline and patience. Astor succeeded because he could see beyond the immediate future. While his competitors were focused on next quarter's profits, he was thinking about next century's wealth. While they were celebrating quick wins, he was building permanent advantages. The real secret of the Astor fortune wasn't real estate. It was time. Astor understood that time is the most powerful force in wealth building. He used time to compound his returns, to build monopolies, and to create systems that would generate wealth long after he was gone. Today, you can still follow Astor's rule. You can buy assets that appreciate over time and hold them forever. You can reinvest your profits instead of spending them. You can think in decades instead of months. The Astor dynasty proved that in America, it doesn't matter where you start. It only matters how long you're willing to wait and how disciplined you are about following the rules that actually build wealth. John Jacob Astor turned $25 into the largest real estate empire in American history by following one simple rule. And that rule is still making people rich today. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.